The water hit me before I could move, cold, sharp. It ran down my cheeks, soaking the collar of the blouse I had ironed that morning. I froze in my chair fork, still in my hand. Kyle leaned back, his jaw tight, like he had proved a point. Chelsea laughed a quick, high sound, then buried her face in her wine glass. The others at the table looked down at their plates. No one said a word. It was my birthday dinner. I had cooked most of it myself. Roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, because Chelsea claimed she was too busy to manage. I asked for another serving. That was all. Kyle snapped, lifted his glass and threw it in my face. The room smelled of garlic and lemon. My blouse clung to my skin. My son wiped his hand on a napkin, disgusted, as if I had made him do it. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped the hardwood. My throat burned, but no words came. I carried my wet napkin to the kitchen sink. The water kept dripping down my chin. Behind me, the voices picked back up. Chelsea said something about dessert. Someone laughed, trying to smooth it over. I stood at the sink and washed my hands, though they weren't dirty. I dried my face with a dish towel, steady, careful, like I was just tidying up. No one followed me. I stayed in the kitchen listening. Kyle talked about work. Chelsea bragged about a new rug she bought for the living room. They moved on like nothing had happened. I opened the fridge, pretending to look for something. My hands shook. I gripped the edge of the counter until it passed. The wall clock ticked loud in the silence. When I walked back to the dining room, the cake was already on the table. My cake. I had baked it the night before. Chocolate with buttercream. Chelsea held the knife, cutting neat slices, passing them around, as if she owned the moment. Kyle slid a plate in front of me without looking up. "Eat," he said. His voice was flat, like a command. I picked up the fork, took a small bite. The cake tasted dry. My jaw hurt from holding it together. The candles I had bought for myself never left the drawer. After cake, Kyle stood, kissed Chelsea on the cheek, and went to the living room. He turned on the TV loud. Chelsea started gathering plates. I took my slice to the sink and rinsed it under hot water, scraping away the crumbs. When I finally sat down again, the tablecloth was still damp where the water had spilled. A dark stain spread across the fabric. It had been my husband's choice, bought years ago on a trip to Asheville. He liked the pattern. I brushed my fingers over the spot, feeling the cold fabric under my hand. No one asked me if I was all right. No one said sorry. I stayed quiet. Finished wiping the table. Put the leftovers in containers. Chelsea walked past me, yawning, saying she was tired. Kyle didn't move from the couch. The kitchen light hummed above me. I folded the stained cloth and set it aside for washing. My hands smelled of soap and lemon. My back ached. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the empty table, and drank slow. The house was quiet now, except for the TV in the next room. I stared at the stains spreading across the folded cloth, and I stayed seated long after everyone else had gone to bed, waiting for my body to stop shaking, waiting for morning to come. And when it did, I knew I would still be carrying the silence into the next day. I scrubbed. Hard. Hot water, vinegar, baking soda. Nothing worked. The stain clung to the cloth like a bruise. I pressed harder, rinsed again. My knuckles burned red. The laundry room was cold. I didn't turn on the heater, just kept working. Breath shallow, jaw tight. The tablecloth curled heavy in my hands, dripping dark water into the sink. That cloth meant something once. Jacob picked it out on a trip we took in fall. He said it reminded him of our first kitchen, simple, warm, full of noise. Now it looked like something dragged out of a drain. I didn't cry. I kept my sleeves rolled up and moved to the counter. Scrubbed again. Pressed it between two towels. I hung it outside on the line. It sagged under its own weight. Wind pulled at the corners. I watched it flap like a white flag someone forgot to raise. Back inside, Kyle was in the kitchen pouring coffee. He didn't look at me, just said, "There's more if you want some." I nodded, didn't speak. Reached into the cabinet for a cup. He added, "Don't take last night so personally." "You were making a scene." I sipped slowly. The coffee burned going down. Chelsea walked in wearing my robe. Her hair was wet. She kissed Kyle on the cheek and said, "Can we throw out that cloth? It's not worth saving." I didn't answer. Just stood there holding my mug. Chelsea didn't wait. She opened the fridge, pulled out almond milk mine, and added it to her coffee like it belonged to her. She leaned on the counter and asked Kyle, "Did you call the landscaper?" "No," he said. "But I did cancel Mom's second card. We'll just simplify things." I stood 5 feet away. Still, no one looked at me. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, placed it carefully back in the cupboard. My hands moved without thought. I didn't want to show how they shook. Later, I found my books moved. The armchair by the window had a throw over it, one of Chelsea's. Bright, scratchy. She'd rearranged the whole corner, my corner. A new framed print sat on the side table. Some quote about success and confidence. I stared at it for a long time, then picked up my book and walked to my room. The door closed softly behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the book, and stared at the page. The words swam. Nothing made sense. My mind was elsewhere. I thought about the checkbook I hadn't touched in weeks, the drawer with Jacob's old papers, the dusty folder I hadn't opened since the funeral. I got up, crossed the room, pulled out the bottom drawer. The folder was still there, tucked under tax files. I set it on the bed, opened it slowly. Deed to the cabin, investment statements, power of attorney unsigned. Everything still in my name. My name. I ran my finger across the ink. Jacob's handwriting in the margins. His notes were short, direct. He trusted me to understand. I didn't move the folder. I left it open on the bed. Let the papers breathe. Outside, I heard Chelsea laughing on the phone. Kyle called my name once, asking if we had any more aspirin. I didn't answer. I just sat with the papers, hands folded, heart beating steady now. The cloth on the line flapped once, then hung still. And as I stood up to close the window, I saw the wind change direction. She threw out the coffee. My brand. The one I'd bought for years. Dark roast, no flavors, no gimmicks. I opened the pantry and saw a bright new bag, something with vanilla in it. I set it on the counter. Waited. Chelsea walked in with a clipboard and a phone in one hand. "We're switching to a cleaner label," she said. "Yours had corn syrup solids." "It's coffee," I said. She smiled without looking up. Exactly. That afternoon, she moved the furniture. The bookshelf went from the corner near the window to the hallway where no one read. My books, some I'd owned since college, ended up in a plastic bin. Labeled Donate. The blanket from Jacob's hospital bed, the one I folded every week even after he passed, was missing from the couch. Replaced by something soft, cream-colored, meaningless. I asked Kyle. He shrugged. "Let her handle it, Mom. She's better at this stuff. This stuff." Chelsea rearranged the spice rack. Tossed the paprika. Said it was expired. Changed the detergent. Flipped the dish rack. Ordered new throw pillows. I kept moving out of her way. She bought a whiteboard for the fridge and wrote, "Groceries. Shared responsibility," in looping purple marker. My name wasn't on it. Kyle came home late. I asked if we could talk. He said about what I tried to explain. The food, the furniture, the corner where I used to sit. "You're overreacting," he said. "She's making the house more functional." I nodded, bit the inside of my cheek. Chelsea announced a new rule: meals at 7. No snacking, no odd foods. She didn't name mine, but she didn't have to. The peanut butter I kept in the cupboard disappeared. The old kettle was gone. My teacup, Jacob's old mug, was replaced with a stack of identical beige ones. I asked where it went. She said, maybe it broke. It hadn't. I found it in the garage, shoved in a box marked seasonal. I took it back, washed it slowly, set it in the cabinet behind the others. I started writing things down, small things, what she moved, what she threw away, what I bought and never saw again. Every time I wrote, my hand steadied. They didn't notice. One morning I came out and found my sewing machine unplugged and boxed. Too bulky, Chelsea said. It was making the space look cluttered. It was mine, I said. You weren't using it. I watched her carry it to the garage. No pause, no permission. I stood in the kitchen that evening staring at the clean counter. Everything white, wiped. Quiet. I made myself a sandwich. No one else was home. I sat alone and ate slowly, using the mug they couldn't see behind the beige ones. The wind picked up again. I heard something shift outside. I opened the back door and stepped onto the porch. The tablecloth was still on the line now. Dry, the stain faint but still there. I took it down, folded it carefully, and brought it back inside. I didn't put it away. I laid it over the dining table, pressed the creases out with my hand. Then I sat down in the seat Chelsea now used and waited for someone to notice. Kyle dropped the envelope on the table like it was nothing. Bank stuff, he said. Don't worry, I simplified everything. I opened it. My name was still on the account, but the credit card had been canceled. A new one had been issued under his name, linked to a shared household line. I looked at him. He didn't flinch. You don't really use it much, Mom, he said. This way it's easier to keep track of the bills. I stared at the paper, my hand curled around the edge. It's just cleaner, he added. More efficient. Chelsea walked in with a grocery bag full of organic snacks. Oh, great, you told her. She unpacked while talking. We'll do all purchases through the house account. It keeps things fair. Fair. She pulled out quinoa chips, rice milk, dried figs. None of it was mine. I said nothing. Took the envelope. Left the kitchen. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my wallet. The old card was still there, warm from my hand, slightly bent. It was mine. It had been mine since Jacob first put my name on it years ago, saying, "This is yours. Use it when you need to. No questions." I placed it in the drawer, not ready to throw it out. That Sunday, I got dressed for the church potluck. Blue blouse, gray slacks, pin from Jacob's funeral still pinned to the collar. I brought my casserole, same as always. Chelsea stood in the hall when I came out. Her eyes landed on the dish. Oh, she said. Didn't I tell you? We're not going this week. You two can stay, I replied. I'll walk. She hesitated. Actually, Kyle and I were thinking maybe it's time to pause that tradition. People there don't really align with our values anymore. It's kind of outdated. She smiled like it was helpful, like she was offering me a ride somewhere else. I stepped past her. Put the dish in the passenger seat of my car. Kyle caught me at the door. Mom, it's about image. You showing up to those things alone, people make assumptions. We're trying to modernize, right? I didn't answer. At the potluck, no one asked why they didn't come. They asked how I was. I sat with the Thompsons, laughed with Susan over coffee. Let the casserole get cold while I listened to old stories. When I got home, the door was unlocked. Chelsea was on the couch, laptop open. Kyle stood behind her. He looked up. We thought you might bring leftovers. I left the dish on the counter. Didn't say a word. That night I found my old coat missing, the navy one. I checked the closet twice. I asked Chelsea. She shrugged. Oh, it looked kind of worn. I put it in the Goodwill pile. I nodded. Stepped outside to the garage. Found the bin labeled donate. My coat was stuffed between a pair of boots and an old blanket. I took it out, dusted it off, hung it back in my room. I stayed quiet. But inside, something steady started to build. Not rage, not panic. Resolve. The next morning, I opened Jacob's folder again, sat at my desk, read every page twice. The cabin was still in my name, the trust untouched, the financial control still mine. And this time, I didn't close the folder when I heard their voices in the hall. I pulled the folder out and spread it across the bed. The papers smelled of dust and old ink. Jacob's handwriting crawled along the margins, blunt notes in blue pen. He never wasted words. Cabin, deed under Marlene Voss only. Accounts, separate, not joint. Power of attorney, never signed. Keep it that way. My throat tightened. He had known. Even then he had known. I stacked the pages, read them again, slower. The cabin was still mine. The accounts untouched, the trust shielded. Everything was in my name. Down the hall, Chelsea's voice rang out. She was giving orders to someone on the phone. Grocery delivery. Flowers for the living room. Another rug. Money spent like it came from nowhere. I pressed my hand flat on the deed. The cabin. A 2-bedroom place near the lake 40 miles north. Jacob bought it before Kyle was born. He wanted a place no one could take away. I hadn't been there in years. But the papers proved it mine still. The accounts were smaller but solid. A savings account Jacob built slowly, never touched. Certificates tucked inside expiration dates still years away. Quiet, steady money. The power of attorney sat on top, blank, unsigned. Jacob must have left it that way on purpose. He trusted me, not anyone else. I closed the folder halfway when Kyle knocked. Mom. His voice was casual. Where's the insurance paperwork? Chelsea wants to review coverage. I slipped the folder under the quilt. I don't know, I called back. He pushed the door open anyway. His eyes skimmed the room. He lingered on the bed. My hand pressed down hard. He shrugged. If you find it, bring it out. Chelsea's making a binder. He left. I waited until his footsteps faded, pulled the folder back out. My palms were damp. I didn't put it away this time. I slid it into my tote deep under a sweater. Safer there than in a drawer. In the kitchen, Chelsea stood barefoot, flipping through a glossy catalog. She looked up. Kyle says you might have the insurance forms. Did you check your room? They're not there, I said. Her eyes narrowed, but she smiled. Quick, thin. We'll just request new ones. I poured myself coffee, sat at the table, drank in silence. She kept flipping pages, circling things with a pen. Curtains, lamps, expensive chairs. I thought about the cabin. The last time we went, Kyle was 12. He fished with Jacob off the dock. I sat inside sewing curtains for the small kitchen window. The smell of pine drifted in. Jacob grilled burgers outside. Kyle laughed, mouthful ketchup on his cheek. That boy was gone. In his place, a man who canceled my card and let his wife run the house like a showroom. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, slipped back to my room, and pulled the tote onto the bed. The folder was safe. The match was already in my hand. I opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, I wrote 3 words: cabin, accounts, lawyer. Then I underlined them. Twice. The next morning, I would make a call. He waited until Chelsea left the house. Got a minute, he asked, casual, leaning in the doorway like we were equals. I didn't answer, just nodded and closed my book. He sat across from me, pulled out a folder, blue branded thick with fake promise. Don't freak out, he started. Just hear me out. I kept my hands still in my lap. There's an opportunity, he said. Real estate adjacent. Boutique rentals. It's solid. I've done the research. We just need capital up front to secure the first property. You're good with numbers, he said. You'll see it makes sense. I didn't move. Kyle smiled like he'd already won. The thing is, Mom, you've got some funds sitting idle. And look, I get it. That's your safety net. But think bigger. You're not exactly spending it. Not anymore. My chest stayed tight. He kept talking. We're building something here. It's family. It's legacy. You'd be helping us now, and down the line we'll take care of you. Everything you've saved, it won't disappear. It'll just grow. I asked, "What do you need?" "Just access," he said. "Temporary. Joint management. I'll handle the logistics. You can oversee it. Chelsea's already working on the structure. We'll loop you in." He slid the folder across the table. Inside, a draft proposal. Charts, bullet points, buzzwords. None of it real. You're not working anymore. You don't travel. You don't spend. This would put your money to use. Otherwise, it just sits there. Wasted. Wasted. I looked down at the paper. There were lines for my name. Space for my initials. I closed the folder. He watched me. "It's family money, Mom. It came from Dad's hard work. From you, too. This is just the next step. You don't want to be the one holding us back?" I stood. "I'll think about it," I said. His smile dropped for half a second, then returned. "Great. Just don't take too long." He left the folder on the table. I didn't open it again. I took it straight to my room and tucked it inside Jacob's folder. Let it sit next to the deed like a parasite beside clean blood. That evening, Chelsea made pasta. She set 3 plates, poured wine-lit candles. Kyle was in a good mood. "Mom's thinking about it," he told her. "I think she gets it now." Chelsea raised her glass. "It's a smart move." I ate quietly. No appetite, no praise. Just the scrape of forks and the weight of their plan hanging in the room like wet laundry. After dinner, I went outside. Sat on the porch with my coat zipped to the neck. The wind cut sharp, but I didn't go back in. I watched the streetlight flicker. Then I opened my phone. Searched through old contacts. Found the name. Still saved. Alan K. Bowers, attorney. I hadn't called him in 5 years, but the number still worked. I saved it again. This time under important. The next morning, I called his office. Left a message. I didn't tell Kyle. I didn't tell Chelsea. I just waited. Quiet. Ready. And when the phone rang back that afternoon, I picked it up before the first ring ended. The invitation never came. I heard Chelsea on the phone confirming the head count. 12 total. Kyle's boss. His wife, a couple from the investment group, and just the core household, she said, voice smooth, keeps it clean. I walked past her as she hung up. She turned. Smiled like nothing happened. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked. "It's just Kyle's boss is very traditional. We want to make the right impression." I said nothing. Later, she brought home new wine glasses, cream napkins, a table runner I'd never seen before. She laid it all out like it was a magazine spread. "Don't cook tomorrow," she said. "We've got it covered." I nodded. In my room, I sat with the folder still open on the bed. The call with Alan had gone well. We had a meeting scheduled, in person, quiet, no paper trail. But still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling. The voices in the kitchen drifted up through the vent. Laughter, clinking glasses. My name didn't come up once. The next day, I watched them get ready. Chelsea wore a pale dress. Kyle ironed his collar twice. I stayed in the living room folding laundry. He passed by me without a glance. "Back by 10, he said. I folded a towel. They left at 6. I stood by the front window and watched the car pull away. The silence after the engine cut was the loudest sound in the house. No dishes, no music, no footsteps, just me. I reheated soup. Sat at the kitchen island. Ate with the spoon Jacob always used. They never noticed it missing. I cleaned up slow, rinsed the bowl, dried it by hand. When I went outside to take out the trash, Mrs. Delaney was walking her dog across the street. I waved. She didn't wave back, just gave a tight nod and kept walking. She used to stop and talk for 20 minutes. Inside, I checked the mailbox. Flyers, credit card offers, a wedding invite for someone I didn't know, no notes, no birthday cards, even belated. I used to get dozens. Now, silence. I called Ruth. She let it ring. I didn't leave a message. I scrolled through old photos instead. My wedding, Kyle's 4th birthday, the first Christmas in this house, faces full of color and noise. Now beige walls, new napkins, polite silence. At 10:15, they returned. Chelsea walked in, laughing heels in her hand. Went well, she said. Boss's wife is obsessed with our setup. Kyle kissed her cheek. Told you it would work. I stayed in the hallway, lights off. They passed me without seeing. The next morning, Kyle poured coffee and asked, "Can you pick up dry cleaning this week? We've got another thing Friday." I nodded. Took the list. Said nothing. After he left, I walked to my room, locked the door, and opened the folder again. This time, I pulled out the post office key from Jacob's keyring, still taped to the bottom, still labeled with a note in his writing, "Only if needed." I placed it beside the notebook, drew a small star next to the lawyer's name. Then I made a second list. Short, just 3 names. One had already stopped calling. The other 2 I wasn't finished with yet. I moved without sound. Up early, slippers soft against the floor, lights off. Only the window light. I brewed my own coffee before they woke, using the last scoop of the blend they'd tried to replace. In the quiet, I opened my notebook, wrote the date, logged the details. Kyle had withdrawn $600 yesterday. I saw the receipt left in the laundry. ATM near the furniture outlet. Chelsea had 3 new packages arrive. Labels read expedited. One box marked return address Staging Co. They were dressing the house, making it look like something it wasn't. I started writing it all down. That afternoon they argued upstairs. Not loud, but sharp. I stood in the hallway and listened through the thin walls. "Chelsea, it only works if the cabin transfers Kyle." "Kyle, I know. She's just dragging her feet." Chelsea again. "Once we get the lake cabin too, it's done. The rest follows." I pressed my hand against the doorframe. "It's done." So that was the end game. They didn't just want my account. They wanted the one thing Jacob left untouched. That night, Chelsea printed a new budget tracker and stuck it to the fridge. Color-coded. My name wasn't on it. I opened the bottom drawer of the hutch, took out the old calculator Jacob always used. Quiet, heavy, still worked. I ran the numbers myself. They were bleeding the joint card. Subtle at first. Now weekly. Dinner parties, upgrades, new prints for the walls. Kyle said it was investment into image. Chelsea said it was setting the tone. I called Alan the next morning, asked if the cabin could be locked legally, even if family protested. "Yes," he said. "With the right move now, you can close that door forever." I said I'd come in the next week. At lunch, Chelsea floated her latest plan. "We're thinking of converting the guest room into an office," she said. "Kyle needs a real space." My room. I looked at Kyle. He avoided my eyes. "We'll help you downsize," Chelsea added. "That old twin cabin of yours might be the perfect quiet place." They wanted me gone. I nodded, took another bite, kept chewing. That evening, I called the locksmith, asked for a cabin rekeying. No rush, but discreet. I wrote down the new address of Alan's firm. Not the downtown office, his private one near Millstone. He'd moved quietly, too. Each night after that, I listened. They talked more freely now. Thought I couldn't hear. Her name's still on everything Chelsea said once. "We need her signature. Once we get that, we're fine." "I'll push," Kyle answered. "She won't fight." I noted it all, word for word. I stayed quiet. Let them think I was small. In the mornings, I wiped counters, paid bills, smiled when they passed, let them rehearse their roles. But in the notebook, I started a new page. Phase 1. Listen, record, prepare. Underneath, I wrote almost ready. Then I circled the cabin's deed again and marked the calendar. The rekeying would happen Friday, the lawyer visit Monday, and tonight I would open the safe Jacob hid under the floorboards. I shut the car door hard. Downtown. A gray morning. I walked fast, clutching the old leather bag Jacob once used for invoices. Inside the folder from the closet. Alan's office was small, tucked above a pharmacy. No receptionist, just him behind a desk piled with neat stacks. He stood when I entered. "Marlene," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "It's been too long." I sat down. No small talk. I need to move everything. Quietly, his eyes sharpened. "Tell me what happened," I told him. The water in my face, the canceled card, the phone calls, the whispers about the cabin. He listened without interrupting, tapping a pen against a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Do you still have Jacob's deeds and account statements?" I slid the folder across. Every page. He opened it carefully, scanning line by line. His jaw tightened. "They think you don't know. That's their mistake." I nodded. "I want to protect what's mine, and I want it done before they notice." We worked for hours. He drafted new documents, a fresh will cutting Kyle out of control, a trust naming only me as executor, property titles moved into my sole name, new bank accounts under a different branch unlinked from the joint one. When he passed me the first pen, my hand shook. I signed anyway, one page after another. Each stroke felt like a door closing behind me. Alan looked up once. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "More sure than I've been about anything." By afternoon, it was done. He slid a thick envelope toward me. Inside, the copies neatly sealed. "Keep these somewhere safe," he said. "Not at the house." "I have a place," I replied. I left his office lighter, but my chest throbbed with a strange mix of relief and grief. Walking back to the car, I thought of Jacob, his voice steady. "Don't sign anything without counsel." He had known. He had left me the tools. At home, I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I drove straight to the hardware store, bought a fireproof lockbox, plain and heavy, paid cash. Back in my room, I placed the envelope inside, laid the cabin deed on top, added the account details Alan had updated, the will, the trust. The lid shut with a metallic snap. I slid the box under the bed. Dinner that night was loud. Kyle bragged about a new project. Chelsea smiled like she'd already bought the furniture for it. I sat at the table, calm. Their words slid past me like wind. They didn't know. I looked down at my hands folded in my lap. The ink still faintly stained my fingers. A reminder. After the dishes, I carried the box into the closet, tucking it behind old coats. Not the final spot, just for now. I turned off the light and stood in the dark for a moment, hearing the murmur of their voices down the hall. They thought I was small, powerless. But the envelope was mine. And the next move would be too. I opened the bank alert and froze. A flagged transaction. Rental deposit. Different zip code. Not the cabin. Not the house. Somewhere else. I clicked through. Monthly payments. Steady. Quiet. For nearly a year. I opened the folder Alan had updated. Cross-referenced the last few joint expenses. One charge stood out: WTR Leasing LLC. Not on any of Chelsea's home lists. Not on Kyle's project plan. I called the leasing office, asked for a copy of the lease pretending to be Chelsea. The voice on the other end was cheerful. "Sure, you're listed as emergency contact. I'll send it right over." The email arrived 5 minutes later. Kyle Voss, tenant since March. 1-bedroom loft, fully furnished, no cosigner. I stared at it. The rent was steep. The address was across town, and the lease listed no forwarding address. I printed it, folded it once, placed it into the fireproof box. I waited. The next day I followed him, told Chelsea I was going to the dentist. She nodded, barely listening. I watched Kyle leave the house mid-morning wearing cologne he didn't use at home. I stayed 3 cars behind. He didn't check his mirrors. The loft building was clean, modern, expensive. I parked across the street, watched him enter with a key. No pause, no hesitation. He belonged there. 40 minutes later, a woman arrived. Young, long coat, laughing into her phone. She buzzed in. He opened the door. I didn't need more. I went home. Chelsea was in the kitchen with her laptop. How was the appointment? I placed the receipt from the gas station on the counter. Long. They're running behind this week. She barely looked up. That evening, she poured 2 glasses of wine, one for Kyle, one for herself. None for me. He kissed her cheek. She leaned into it. They clinked glasses, practiced smiles, not surprised, not angry. In on it. She had to be. The joint account, the timing, the long phone calls, they'd been keeping me in place, smiling, nodding, waiting. Not because they didn't know better, because they knew exactly what they were doing. Every meal, every chore, every favor they let me keep. Strategy. I walked to my room, shut the door, and opened the notebook again. Phase 2. Let them play. Gather final proof. Control the close. I drew a line beneath it. No more wondering if they'd change. No more hoping Kyle remembered who raised him. I had everything I needed now. I smiled and passed the salt. Let's do something nice before I sign, I said. A dinner. Just the 3 of us. One last family meal before everything changes. Kyle lit up. That's a great idea. Chelsea leaned forward. I'll open the good wine. I nodded, still smiling. I'll cook. They didn't ask what I planned. They never did. I made the call to Alan that night. Gave him the date, the time. Told him to bring the notary, no briefcases, no ties. Dress like a guest, I said. I'll bring a bottle of wine, he replied. Mrs. Elkins agreed, too delighted to be a witness. You've helped me enough over the years, she said. Happy to return the favor. I cleaned the kitchen from top to bottom, ironed the cloth napkins, pulled the wedding china from the back of the cabinet. Chelsea floated through the house that morning, like she already owned it. Don't forget to pull the deed, she said, sipping her smoothie. I think it's still in your room. I smiled. Already set aside. Kyle kissed her cheek. Told you she's coming around. I set the table at 5. Roast chicken, potatoes, fresh rolls, peach cobbler cooling on the stove. At 6:45, the doorbell rang. Just Elkins, I said. I invited her to drop off those church documents. She might stay for dessert. Kyle didn't blink. Chelsea poured wine. Alan arrived 2 minutes later, arm linked with the notary, like they were old friends. He greeted everyone by first name, complimented the roast. We sat. We ate. I let them talk. Kyle rambled about a new investment pitch. Chelsea bragged about her interior design blog. I poured another glass of wine. Before dessert, let's sign everything. Kyle nodded eagerly. I'll grab a pen. Alan opened the folder. The notary pulled a stamp from her purse. Chelsea paused. Wait, what is this? Alan smiled politely. This is the corrected transfer, including full property rights retention debt exclusion clauses and revised succession. I slid the paper toward me. Which means you keep everything Alan said, including the cabin, including your accounts, including final decision power on all distributions. Kyle stared at the page. That's not what we agreed. I looked up. No, it's better. Chelsea's jaw clenched. You said I'd sign. I picked up the pen. I never said what. I signed slowly, clearly. The notary stamped the document. Mrs. Elkins nodded from across the table. Thank you all for coming, I said, pushing the folder back to Alan. Kyle didn't move. Chelsea forced a smile. Should we still have dessert? I rose from my seat. Already sliced. I walked to the counter, lifted the plates, carried them back, laid a slice of cobbler in front of each of them. Chelsea picked up her fork. Kyle didn't touch his. Alan leaned back in his chair. Delicious as always, Marlene. I took a bite. Warm, sweet, sharp. They chewed slowly, said nothing. And I reached under the table, pulled out the envelope from my purse, and handed it to Kyle. Just in case you want to see the full breakdown, I said. He opened it, saw the lease copy, the second address, the woman's name. His face drained. I stood. I'll be at the cabin by morning. Don't follow. Then I turned to clear the table. Chelsea slid the envelope across the table. Just sign here, she said, her voice syrupy. It finalizes everything. Cabin accounts, future permissions, standard stuff. I didn't touch it. Kyle leaned forward. It's just legalese. We'll make sure you're taken care of, Mom. I picked up the pages, read slowly, line after line. Power of attorney, irrevocable transfers, full access to liquid and fixed assets. My name was still on top, but everything under it was theirs. They thought I wouldn't notice. I turned the last page. Do I get a copy? Of course, Chelsea said too fast. I nodded, folded the papers. I'll sign after dinner. Kyle grinned. We'll prep the witness. They left the room like they'd won. I sat still, heart steady. They weren't asking. They were cornering. This wasn't a favor. It was the blade under the smile. I walked to my room, pulled the lockbox from the closet, took out the signed documents from Alan, held them side by side. Chelsea's version was a gut job. Alan's version was a shield. I put hers back in the envelope and sealed it. That night we sat around the living room. Chelsea played hostess. Kyle handed me a pen. Let's make it official, he said. I held the pen like it might cut me. Do you want me to read it again? No need, Chelsea smiled. You've always trusted us. I uncapped the pen, wrote 3 slow letters on the bottom corner of the last page. Void. Then I handed it back. Kyle stared. What is this? It's my signature, I said. Just not the one you wanted. Chelsea's face cracked. I stood up. I've already signed what matters. With my lawyer. With a notary. With a witness. Kyle shot up from the couch. You're not thinking straight. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months. I left the room. Took my coat. Grabbed the fireproof box. I didn't slam the door. Just clicked it shut behind me. The porch light buzzed. The air was cold. I got in the car and drove. Not fast. Not afraid. Just done. Back in the house, I knew they'd be pacing, calling, but I wouldn't hear it. The cabin road was quiet. Gravel under tires. Trees lining both sides. I turned off the radio. Parked. Unloaded the box. Unlocked the new door with the new key. Inside, it smelled like cedar and silence. I set the box on the counter. Lit the stove. Then I poured myself a cup of coffee. I walked back into the house with a small bag in my hand. Chelsea was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She didn't look up right away. When she finally did, her eyes narrowed, suspicious, then softened into a fake sweetness. What's this? She asked. A gift, I said, placing the bag on the table between us. She pulled the tissue away, lifted the mug, and read the words printed in sharp black letters. Still mine. For a moment she blinked, puzzled. Then she laughed. Loud, careless. How cute, she said. Finally, something with a little personality. I'll use it for my morning coffee. Kyle walked in from the kitchen. What's that? Chelsea held it up. A mug, from your mom. He grinned easy. That's nice, Mom. Maybe we should get a matching set. I smiled back. Maybe. Chelsea set the mug down with a clink. It'll look good in the new kitchen. Fresh, modern, not so. She stopped herself, but I heard the word anyway. Old. I folded my hands in my lap. I thought it fit you. She poured herself wine. You're finally loosening up. We might actually get along. Her laugh cut the air again. Kyle kissed her cheek, distracted already, talking about investors' dinner plans, money. I kept my face still, smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to. But every time Chelsea's hand brushed the mug, every time her eyes skimmed the words without seeing them, I felt the quiet weight of it settle. A warning in plain sight, wrapped as kindness. They laughed, made plans, clinked glasses. I sat back, sipping water, letting their voices blur into noise. The mug sat on the table between us, white, solid, unmoving. Chelsea didn't understand. Not yet. But she would. I stood when Kyle got up for another drink. "I'll be back tomorrow," I said. "You'll have company for your big night." Chelsea raised her glass. "Don't be late. You wouldn't want to miss the celebration." The mug's black letters gleamed under the light as I walked out, and I left them laughing behind me. I carried the tray into the living room. Glasses rattled against the silver wine sloshing as I tried not to spill. Chelsea's laugh cut through the music. Kyle's voice followed, booming, eager to impress. The house smelled of catered food and new flowers. People I didn't know filled the chairs, drinks in hand, leaning toward Kyle, as if he were already somebody. I set the glasses down on a low table. One of the men glanced at me, then at Chelsea. "She, the maid?" he asked. Chelsea's smile didn't break. She sipped her wine, said nothing. Laughter rolled on. I picked up the empty glasses and turned back toward the kitchen. The tray was heavier than it should have been. My fingers ached from gripping it too tightly. In the sink, I let the glasses drop into the water. The clatter was loud, but no one noticed. The voices from the living room carried thick with praise and promises. Chelsea's tone rose above them, polished, perfect, as if this house had never belonged to me at all. I wiped my hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. The mug I'd given her sat near the stove, untouched. Its words facing me like a quiet echo. Still mine. Kyle stepped in. Tie loosened, face flushed. "Great turnout," he said. He grabbed another bottle from the counter. "Investors love Chelsea. This is going to change everything." He didn't wait for me to answer. He was gone before the cork hit the trash. I washed the glasses one by one. My hands were steady now. The noise of the party dulled as if a door had closed. Chelsea came in later, heels clicking, perfume thick. She topped off her glass and leaned against the counter. "You don't mind helping, do you?" she asked, already turning away. "It keeps things simple." She didn't see the way I looked at her back. She didn't see the papers hidden in my bag, the photographs, the receipts. I rinsed the last glass. "Set it upside down to dry." "Not at all," I said. She smiled, satisfied. Then she drifted back into the crowd, her voice bright and sharp as she called for Kyle. I stood still in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, and the soft buzz of the porch light outside, louder than the music now. I laid the stack of envelopes on each plate, one per guest. Each sealed, each addressed by hand. Kyle glanced at them, confused. "What's this dessert?" I said. They laughed, awkward. Chelsea reached first, tore hers open. Her eyes scanned the page. The wine glass slipped in her hand. Across the table, Mr. Duval, the main investor, held his copy higher. Read slower. His brow lowered with every line. "These are bank authorizations," he said. "With your name on them, Kyle." "They're fake," Kyle said quickly. "She's trying to confuse everyone. They're not fake." Alan interrupted, voice calm, even. He sat at the far end of the table. No tie, just a gray button-up and a folded stack of supporting documents in front of him. They were submitted using Marlene's social security number, forged, illegally. "I have the originals." Chelsea's chair scraped back. "You said she'd already signed. I said she would." Kyle snapped. "She was going to." I leaned forward. I wasn't. Gasps. Forks paused midair. Mr. Duval folded his paper slowly. "I don't invest with liars." Kyle's jaw locked. "It's not what it looks like." Chelsea stood. "This is an ambush." No, I said. It's a reckoning. Alan opened his folder. We've filed the formal complaint. Copies of all forged signatures, account withdrawals, and wire transfers have already been submitted. Bank flagged them this morning. Kyle paled. You're turning on your own son? I'm protecting what's mine. Mrs. Elkins, seated to the right, cleared her throat. I always wondered why she stopped hosting Christmas. The room shifted. Chelsea grabbed her purse. We're leaving. No, Alan said. You're not. She froze. There's a police officer waiting outside, he added. Not to arrest you, but to ensure nothing leaves this house that doesn't belong to you. I stood, reached into my bag, placed the original deed to the cabin on the table. This house is mine, I said. The land is mine. The accounts are mine. And your guest mugs? I'll keep those too. Kyle looked around like he might still find someone on his side. No one met his eyes. He opened his mouth, closed it. I picked up my coffee and took a slow sip. The mug read, "Still mine." The table was silent now. Chelsea sat down hard. Kyle rubbed his hands together like he was cold. Alan gathered the documents, stacked them neatly. The party was over. I turned to the officer waiting by the door. Would you mind walking them to the car? He nodded. I watched as they left the house they tried to erase me from. And I didn't say a word. Kyle called 12 times before noon. I didn't answer. Alan texted account freeze complete. Funds secured. Cabin closed sale cleared this morning. I read the words twice. Let them settle. By 3 o'clock, Chelsea's voice filled the voicemail. High, sharp, breaking at the edges. The bank says the account is locked. They won't tell us anything. Did you do this? You can't? I pressed delete. The next call was Kyle. My paycheck bounced. The mortgage payment didn't clear. What the hell did you sign? I put the phone face down. The coffee maker gurgled. The cabin was quiet, steady. Unlike their house now cracking at the seams without me holding it up. Alan sent another message. Chelsea's SUV dealer collected it this morning. Lease defaulted. They were paying with your account transfers. I pictured her standing on the curb, arms crossed, trying to bargain the neighbors watching as the tow truck pulled away. I poured coffee into my mug. Took a sip. At dusk, Kyle tried again. This time his voice was low, deliberate. Mom, listen. We can fix this. Just put the money back. We'll take care of you. We'll make sure you're not alone. I closed the phone without replying. The logs in the stove cracked. I added another piece of wood, watched the flame catch. The truth pressed in. They never planned to take care of me. Not once. They planned to bleed me dry, smiling while they did it. By morning, another update came. Alan had wired the cabin sale proceeds into my private account. Untouchable. Off limits. Chelsea texted this time. We need to talk. Urgent. Please. I set the phone aside. Stepped out onto the porch. The air was sharp, the trees black against a pale sky. Their world was collapsing. Mine was only just beginning to steady. I stood there until the phone buzzed again and again, and I let it. I spotted her the moment I stepped into the church foyer. Chelsea stood near the bulletin board, smile fixed, hands folded just so. Her eyes scanned the room like she was the one who belonged here. She hadn't stepped into this building once in 6 years. Now here she was, chatting with the pastor's wife like they exchanged recipes every Sunday. I walked past her without slowing down. Hi, Marlene, she said brightly, touching my arm. I stopped, turned, looked her straight in the face. She dropped her hand. I thought we could talk. Just the two of us, she said, voice lower now. Maybe clear the air. I think we all said things we didn't mean. I waited. Said nothing. She forced another smile. You know Kyle misses you. He's just confused and stressed. Things moved too fast. I nodded once, then walked away. She didn't follow. After the service, I found a folded note tucked inside my Bible. Her handwriting. We're still family. Please don't let one mistake ruin everything. I tore it in half, dropped it in the trash on my way out. By Monday, Kyle had sent 4 emails. Paragraphs long. Apologies wrapped in excuses. You were always the strongest person I knew. Chelsea just wanted to help manage things. It was never about money, it was about structure and planning. I didn't respond. The next one said, I'm sorry if it felt like we excluded you. I stared at the screen. Closed the laptop. That night, Alan called. They've started damage control. They're contacting anyone who might know what happened. Trying to reframe it. Let them, I said. He paused. You're sure you don't want to respond? I'm sure. Kyle's 6th message ended with Mom, just reply. Say anything. I'll come up there. I'll drive right now if you say the word. I powered the phone off. The quiet was thicker than before, but not heavy, just clean. I poured another cup of coffee, stood by the window, and watched the leaves blow down the driveway. Outside, everything was shifting, and inside, I let it. I slid my ID across the counter. The teller looked up, polite. How can I help you today? Close the account. She typed, paused. It's joint. Are you sure? Positive. She nodded. Printed papers. I signed every line without hesitation. That account had held my patience, my silence, my usefulness. I left it with nothing. The balance transferred into a new name, mine only. No access, no cosigners, no room for pleading fingers. I walked out lighter. Next stop, the travel office down the street. Still old school, still local. I stepped inside and told the man behind the desk, one way. Domestic. Quiet. He blinked. Do you have a destination in mind? I do. I gave him the name. A small town, mountains. 1 bus route, no family ties. He nodded slowly as if that told him more than I'd said. Ticket printed, paid in full. No return. Back home, I packed a single suitcase. The clothes I actually wore, a folder of documents, 2 photos, 1 mug. Everything else could stay. Let them box it, fight over it, burn it. I wrote no note. Left no key. That night, I took one last walk around the yard. The porch light buzzed. The garden hadn't been watered in weeks, and I no longer cared. I sipped coffee in the dark. The plane left at dawn. So would I. I turned the key. The lock clicked, no hesitation, no creak, no memory clinging to it. Just a clean sound, sharp and simple. The door opened into silence. No shoes piled in the corner, no voices down the hall, no smell of someone else's dinner lingering in the air. I stepped inside. The apartment was small, a studio, white walls, thin carpet, a kitchenette with nothing on the counters. I dropped my bag, walked straight to the window. The mountains rose in the distance, quiet and certain. On the kitchen counter, I unpacked my things. A small tin of coffee, 1 chipped mug, a framed photo of Thomas, his arm around me, our hands muddy from the garden, his grin half laugh, and the envelope. I set it beside the frame. Inside, 1 letter, written by hand, sealed days ago, not mailed, not meant to be. Just something I had to write once, then never again. I filled the kettle, watched it heat. The hum of the burner was the only sound. No footsteps, no interruptions, no waiting for the next blow. I poured the coffee, held it close, let the steam warm my fingers, sat by the window. Outside, the light shifted. The world moved on. I didn't. Not yet. I reached for the envelope, tapped it once, then let it be. Some things don't need answers. Some doors stay locked, and some silences finally belong to me. I slid open the glass door. Cold air rushed in sharp and clean, the kind that made your eyes sting, not your heart. I stepped onto the balcony, coffee in hand. Below the street was still. 1 man walked a dog. A kid zipped by on a bike too small. No one waved. No one knew me. I liked it that way. The chair creaked as I sat. Metal frame, stiff cushion. The mug warmed my palms. Steam curled up soft and slow. Still mine. The words faced me. I hadn't planned it, but I liked the way they looked out here. Not on a kitchen table someone else owned. Not in a room where silence meant surrender. Out here, it meant peace. I sipped. No cream. No sugar. No one called. No one asked. No one barged in to say the bank called the contractor needed a check. The car lease was overdue. I crossed my legs, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, watched the wind move through the trees without needing anything from me. The phone inside the apartment stayed silent, turned off, tucked away. The folder with the deed, the signed sale papers, the account records. It all sat locked in a drawer. I didn't need to look at them anymore. I'd already won. Not loudly, not cruelly, not with fists or shouts or courtroom speeches, just by leaving, just by waking up and drinking coffee in a place where no one expected me to hand over my name. The sun crept higher, brushing the tops of the buildings. A breeze stirred my hair. I drank slowly, no rush, no eyes watching, no hands reaching for what was mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't brace myself for the day. I let it come.